Okay, so same idea, decimal multiplication. So we got our two decimals here, but we're going to try to make sense of it using a grid. And what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much focus on each value, one being dealing with rows and the other one dealing with columns. Okay, so in our very first one, we're going to use this guy for the top row, and this guy's going to deal with columns. Okay. So there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? In other words, this is a 10 by 10 grid. Okay? Do you guys happen to know what 10 times 10 is going to be?
100.
Yeah. So in other words, there's 100 squares in this entire grid. Okay? So that's important to know. Decimal 2. In other words, it's taking up 1, 2 of the columns. Or sorry, rows. Okay? So think of this like being here's decimal 1, this would be decimal 2, and if we got to a 10, that would be one whole row. So this represents 0, 2, counting 2 across here. Okay? So kind of like we filled in 2 across. Then our decimal 7, well, he's going to deal with 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 all the way down here. So in other words, this guy's filling in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now we're used to kind of setting this up like a bingo chart, and we just kind of corner off everything. Okay. So we would fill in the rest of these, and we could essentially just count to figure out how many there are here and how many are filled in here.
14.
14. Yeah, it's the exact same thing as kind of doing 2 by 7, right? We get 14. But there are 14 out of a total how many in this grid?
100.
100. So this is kind of like setting up partially division. Think of it like we have 14 out of 100. Okay? 14 divided by 100. Are you guys use calculators at all or anything? No? Okay. So this is like a percentage. Have you guys ever done percentages at all?
Yes. 14
out of 100. Do you know what percent that would be?
14%.
14%. Do you know how to turn that into a decimal?
No.
No? You essentially just count over 2 decimal places, which is identical to what this question had. There were 2 decimal places involved. So whenever we divide something by 100, you really just take the top value and move 2 decimal places over, and that will give you the decimal value. So in other words, out of the total grid, there is 0.14 filled in. So the grid is a little more complex than what we're doing. They're trying to kind of show you it partially as a division question also. Okay? But really all we have to remember is there's 2 decimal places. It's like multiplying 2 by 7, and we just kind of move the decimal back 1, 2 values. Okay? Now, there is another style of multiplying, and it usually works with more than one value. So I am going to show it to you. It looks like this, and let's say I had a bit of a different question, maybe something like 2.7 times 3.5. Okay, I want you to recognize that there are 2 values in each. Okay, in other words, what we're going to do is, like we talked about before, we'll get this guy to set up rows. So because there are 2 values, I'm going to set up 2 rows. Okay, so 1 row, 2 rows, and this guy is going to be our column. And because there's 2 values, we're going to set up 2 columns. So what we're setting up essentially is a box. This is going to help us with our multiplication. We've split it into 2 rows, or in that case it's technically 2 columns, and 2 rows. Okay? So this is just a different way to set up a multiplication question. We have 2.7 and we have 3.5. The way we do the multiplication here is kind of like a bingo game. The only difference is I am going to put little crosses through this, diagonals essentially. Okay? And when we're multiplying, the top diagonal, he's going to deal with the tens column, and the bottom one will deal with the ones. So I know this is kind of new to you guys. What would 7 times 3 be? 21. So the 2 would go in this column here because it's the tens, and the 1 would go down here. Okay? It doesn't matter what order I do as long as I follow it like a bingo stream. So let's say I did now 3 by 2. What would 3 by 2 be?
6.
6. Well, 6 would go in the ones column. What would go in the tens column? 0. That's right. Let's try the next guy. 5. What would 5 be multiplied to figure out this box? What do we have to multiply it by?
7.
Yeah, because the 7's in that row. So what is 5 times 7?
35.
Okay, so what goes in this tens column?
3.
And what goes in the ones?
5.
Good. And then the last one, we'd have 2 and 5. What is that going to multiply to?
10.
10. So we'd have a 1 and a 0. Now the reason I put those diagonals in is because they're going to help us with all of our adding. Okay? What I'm going to do is everybody in this diagonal, which is only one number, I'm going to add together. Everybody in this diagonal, which are 3 numbers, I'm going to add together. Everyone in this diagonal, oh, can you still see that? Kind of. And then everyone in that diagonal we're going to add together. And that's why the diagonals are set up. And it's going to give us our answer. So what's 5 plus nothing?
5.
5. 3 plus 1 plus 0?
4.
4. 1 plus 6 plus 2?
9.
9. And 0 plus nothing is 0. Right? How many decimals were involved in this question?
2.
2. So I start here and I go back 1, 2. My answer is 9.45. Okay? Which would have been identical if I did it the old-fashioned way. And I'm going to do the old-fashioned way a little quicker because I think you guys have seen it once before. 7 by 5 is 35. 5 by 2 is 10 plus 3 would give me 13. Okay? Scroll down. Because now we're working with tens, I put a 0 here. 3 by 7 is 21. 3 by 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Add them all together, we get 5, 4, 9. There were 2 decimal places. 1, 2, 9.45. Okay? So that's just another style of multiplying. Okay? Either one works, it's really whatever you're more comfortable with. Okay? But this was essentially the multiplying by a grid. Remember, it's out of 100, we multiply to find how many values there are, and we kind of divide by 100 to find out our decimal place.